Okay, so it's book club time, and today we are discussing Notes on an Execution. This book, amazing, and I'm going to give you a short blurb, and then I'll tell you when the spoilers will start occurring, so that if you have not read the book yet, you can turn it off. Or if you are supposed to be reading this for book club and didn't get it read, you won't have to, because I'll tell you all about it. So, Notes on an Execution. It follows our serial killer Ansel in his last 12 years of life, as it's a countdown to him being executed. So it's alternating points of view. We get Ansel, and then the next chapter will be the point of view of one of the women that were in his life. So we start with Ansel right off. It's 12 hours till when he's going to be executed. And we know he's on trial, or not on trial. We know he's being executed for the murders of women or girls, because he is kind of referred to as the girly killer, I think is what they call him. Yeah. And he doesn't like that name. So we, it's really hot, so I'm taking off my sweatshirt. So, we get to know Ansel, and he's questioning whether he was ever normal. So, then the next chapter alternates, and we get the point of view of Lavender, who is his mother. So the book takes a step back in time, and we get to meet his mother, and then, it alternates back to Ansel, current day, another countdown. And then we get to meet a girl from his childhood named Saffy, or Saffron. And he meets her in childhood, but she does come back into his life as an adult, which is really interesting. That tie-in and the way that was written was amazing. So then we meet Saffy, and then, of course, then it alternates back to Ansel. And then we get the point of view of his wife, Jenny. So we know that he does go on and get married, not murdered. He doesn't get murdered. We know he goes on and gets married. So, yeah. So this book is amazing. It would be great for book clubs. It does have animal mutilation, and of course, it does talk about the murders that occurred, although it is not graphic. So it wasn't something that I was like worried about reading. Okay, so amazing, and the point of the book is to get us not just to understand how he became a murderer, or whether he was born that way, or whether he was made that way. It also makes a very good point of saying that we need to remember the victims. So it says, the victims were people. So what were their lives, and not to remember them as, the victim or the person who was murdered, and instead to remember them for what not only they did before they were murdered, but also to think about what they would have went on and accomplished in their life, which was, it's amazing. So that's an amazing part of the book. Okay, so now I'm going to get into spoilers, and I'm going to actually tell you everything that happens in the book. So turn off the video if you don't want to be spoiled. So, okay, so here we go. And I'll try and take it like in chronological order as it does in the book, because the book does flash back and forth in time and with different points of view, but it's perfect. You can keep up and you know what's going on. Okay, so we start with Ansel, 12 hours before he's going to be executed. We then jump to Lavender, his mother, and we jump to when she was a teen. So she's 16, living in a not so good home. Her mom's crappy. And so Ansel meets Johnny, who's an older guy, and she thinks he's going to be her kind of ticket out of her situation. So she goes back to tell her mom, and most moms would be like, you don't know this guy, he's older, like, what the heck? Like, don't do it, But instead her mom's like, oh, you go ahead. Her mom's horrible. So Lavender marries Johnny, and he takes her to this old farmhouse. out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, she is secluded. He's isolated her. She gets pregnant. He won't take her to a hospital. She's had no prenatal care whatsoever. And he thinks that they're going to deliver the baby themselves. So, and he won't even let her do it in the house because he doesn't want to clean up the mess. I mean, your heart starts breaking for Lavender right away. So we see Lavender in a barn on hay giving birth. And I mean, she is like so young. I mean, they got married when she was 16. And so she is 18. I think she might be 18 by the point she gives birth to him. So Lavender gives birth and gets no help from Johnny whatsoever. She asks him for help just to hold the baby and stuff, and he won't even do that. And so she like isn't taking care of herself. I mean, her hair is like matted, and yeah, it's really sad. And so she has no help. She's dealing with this newborn, and she kind of like just floats through life figuring it out, and she's still expected to do all these chores on the farm and take care of the baby. Like Johnny does nothing for the baby. And so Johnny starts getting more and more mean, and he starts locking up their food, and so she's basically like starving, her and Ansel both. And so then so we're like feeling very sorry for Lavender, and we're also angry at her for staying in that situation, but she does. And Johnny gets more and more abusive. And then at one point, Ansel wanders off into the woods, and she begs Johnny to go look for their son. And instead he wants to have sex. And so he forces her to have sex. And then she then goes out to go try and find Ansel. And he comes out of the woods and he's bloody and stuff. And she's thinking he's been injured. And instead it's that he has killed the squirrel, basically pulled off its head somehow. And he's standing there with this dead animal. And yeah, it's really gross. So we start to get a glimpse that Ansel at 4 years old is somehow killed this animal. And so then we fast forward a bit, and Lavender gets pregnant again. And Lavender, since she's so secluded, she in her mind writes letters to her friend that she had known in high school, who was going to go off to California and be something great. So she starts writing letters in her mind to her friend, just kind of to cope with her situation. And then she gets pregnant again, and she gives birth to another baby boy and gets no help again whatsoever. So she is like despondent kind of, and so depressed and everything because of her situation. And Johnny's locking up the food, so she's like starving. So she has no energy. She doesn't feel well, and Johnny's still abusive. And so then it turns where Johnny like bashes Ansel's head in against the wall because Lavender was so sick and weak and everything, she wouldn't get out of bed when he told her to. And so he like rips out a chunk of her hair, and he's beating her and everything. And Ansel walks in, and he's holding the baby because at 4 years old, he's having to take care of this little baby that she named Ellis. And so then Johnny starts beating on Ansel, and so then Lavender knows she has to do something. So she packs a bag that she hides in the closet, and she's gonna run away. And but she doesn't run away. And instead, one day when she is like at wit's end, she decides to convince Johnny to take a drive. So they go for a drive, and she then gets him to stop at a gas station, and she calls on the phone to social services and said, there's 2 kids in the house, go get them, you know. And so then she gets the clerk at the store to help her, and the clerk helps her, and Ansel's like stomping around. I mean, not Ansel, Johnny is stomping around outside and everything. And so then he just takes off when the clerk says the police are coming. So Lavender decides she's going to go off to California to go and try and find her high school friend. Of course, she never finds her. But she does meet a group of, it's a commune of ladies, and does get help from them in dealing with the abuse that she has endured. And yeah, and it's really sad though, because she doesn't try to go back and get her kids or anything, which is horrible. So Ansel ends up in foster care, and then we see him in a group home. And meanwhile, when the incident occurred with him getting beaten, and Ansel, when he was little, he was holding his little baby brother Ellis, and Ellis was screaming and crying and everything. And we think that Ellis died. It was maybe even killed by Johnny trying to get him to stop screaming, like suffocated him or something, is what the book kind of leads you to believe. So then we have and Ansel and Ellis get separated. I mean, so we don't know if he's dead, and even Ansel like doesn't know if he's dead or not. He kind of, at some points, he kind of assumes he's dead. But yeah, so then Ansel is in the group home. He meets a girl named Saffron, and Saffron is kind of infatuated with Ansel. And so she, yeah, they're 11 years old at this point in time. And so they like start sneaking off together kind of, and they're laying in this room listening to this music, and she's like kind of in heaven, and she draws a picture of the two of them together and wants to go give it to him. So she goes to go sneak up on, find Ansel, and he's down at a creek back behind the group home. So she kind of sneaks up on him, and he is there with dead animals that he has killed. So a fox is one of them. So she freaks out. He tells her she can't tell anyone. She goes back to the group home, and he goes, and I don't know if it's as a peace offering or a bribery sort of thing, but he goes and gets these 2 oatmeal cookies that are so gross. They're old, but they're the cookies that the house mom buys for them for birthdays and special occasions. So he's stolen these cookies, and he goes to the big kind of room with all the bunk beds where all the girls stay, to give them to her. And so when he gives them to her, the girls all start laughing. It's not necessarily at Ansel, but they're all trying to cheer up Saffy because they know something has happened, but she doesn't exactly tell them what's happening because she's scared. So Ansel gets mad because he thinks they're laughing at him. So he goes and gets the dead fox and puts it in her bed. It's so gross. So she freaks out, bundles the fox up in the sheet, and goes and throws it away without telling anyone. But at that point, then she becomes almost despondent. She won't eat. She's sad, and the house mom knows something has happened, and even the social worker tries to talk to her, but she won't say what happened. I think mostly because she's scared, but so she doesn't tell them what happened and about the dead fox. So they just move her to a different home. So then Ansel starts doing really well in school. He even gets into a college. He's working jobs and everything, and kind of gets some help from his last foster parent. And so then Ansel goes to college, and he's studying philosophy, and he has this manifesto kind of that he's writing that's all about how people aren't good or evil, that everything is gray. There's no such thing as all good or all evil. Everyone's a mix of both. So Ansel then he meets Jenny in college, and she takes him back home to go meet her parents, and she tells her parents he had a bad upbringing, please don't buy him a bunch of presents because it's Christmas time. And so her parents don't listen, they do it anyways. Jenny has a twin sister named Hazel, and Hazel has she is basically training. She wants to be a professional dancer, but she has suffered a severe injury and had to have surgery on her knee, I think it is. And so she's been cooped up at home. She is excited to get to see Jenny, but there's this, of course, jealousy element between the sisters. Let's just say there's tension between the sisters. Nothing bad or anything, but we just see that Hazel feels like Jenny always gets all the attention from their parents, and that she is kind of the one left behind and not loved by the parents and everything. So then we yeah, so then one night, Hazel is up because she can't sleep, and so she looks out into the backyard, and Angela is out there, and he's burying something, and she doesn't know what it is, and she, in her mind, she's like, am I dreaming? You know, so she doesn't ring it up or even go look and see what it was he was burying in their own backyard. It's weird. So then Johnny and Jenny get married, and Jenny wants to be a nurse, labor and delivery nurse. She's a really sweet girl. And Saffy then comes back in the picture. So Saffy has, she had a few wild years as a teen. And then one of her friends from that she had known through foster care gets murdered. And so she goes to this detective and is like, I want to know how to help. Like, what can I do? So this detective, Corinne, kind of takes Saffy under her wing and like helps her in her career. So Saffy becomes one of the youngest detectives there is in the New York area, and wants to, you know, solve murders because she saw this happen. And lo and behold, then we see a part of Ansel like looking back where he, as a teen before he met Jenny, we know that he's picked up a couple of girls like on the road when he saw them. We don't know exactly what happened, but he kept trinkets from these girls. And so one of the trinkets that we find out, because Saffy knew this girl, was that she always wore this lavender ring, and she would like, at the group home, she would like suck on it kind of as a pacifier, as a kind of coping mechanism. So we know this lavender ring is a big deal, and it's gonna, like, something's gonna happen with this lavender ring. So Saffy's now a detective, and Ansel gives this lavender ring that we know Saffy's friend had back in the group home to Jenny as an engagement ring, kind of. Well, it's a ring she wears. And so, yeah. So then we see the ring. And so then Saffy, the bodies get discovered of the girls, and it's back behind this trailer home in this, like, nature area. And so the bodies are discovered, and Saffy knows the girls, and so she's determined to figure it out. So she makes this connection to the fact that Ansel has lived there in one of the trailer homes. And so she starts she just has this gut intuition. So she thinks that Ansel killed the girls. And so by this point in the book, we're like, oh yeah, we don't know how, we don't know who exactly, how many, or how he did it, or why, but he killed these girls. And so Saffy then wants to prove it. So Saffy's at this point in the career, but her boss has determined that he's going to pin the murders of these girls on this homeless guy that they've been trying to get for stuff. So the homeless guy gets arrested. Saffy knows in her heart that it's the wrong person. So it comes time for the trial for the homeless guy to be on trial for the murders of these girls, and he hangs himself. So the trial doesn't happen. So Saffy is still set on trying to prove that Ansel killed these girls because he was in the area, and because she knows that he knew the girls, and that she knows that he killed animals whenever he was young. So she's still set on trying to prove it. And she's kind of infatuated with it to a point where, like, it's hurting her career. And yeah, and even though she doesn't get fired or anything, they're all like, you're trying to come up with stuff to prove that he did it. So meanwhile, Saffy then goes, or Jenny has become, like, the honeymoon's over between her and Ansel, and he's getting more weird with his manifesto that he's writing, and she knows something's not right, and he's abusive. So she contacts Hazel to try and get some help to leave him. Her and Hazel come up with a plan where she's going to move to Texas. So she gets to move to Texas and gets a new job there, gets an attorney to file divorce papers for her. And Ansel is there then stuck, not married to Jenny, on his own. And then we see then, who's the next yeah, so then Saffy then goes and approaches Jenny at the hospital and is like, hey, I'm wondering about your ex. And so she freaks Jenny out, and Jenny doesn't exactly tell her what all happened, but Jenny knows that Ansel is being looked at for these murders of these girls. So then all of a sudden we find out that Ellis, who is Ansel's the little baby that was crying, that Ansel thought maybe he killed by suffocating him to try and get him to quit crying. We learned that he's actually alive and got adopted out of the foster care system, had a great childhood, everything's wonderful. He got married, he had a daughter who's referred to as Blue. And we see these pictures of Blue, and she has this blue house. It's a blue cafe. And we see a picture that is returned to Ansel. It's one of the things that he requested from this guard, Sherry, that he tries to befriend while he's on death row. And so Sherry gets this picture for him, and it's of the blue house, and it's of Blue, the little girl who would actually be his niece. And so then we figure out that Ansel has tried to talk her into helping him escape. So she's supposed to go and plant a gun under the seat of the transfer van that's going to take him from the prison to the place where he's going to be executed. And so he tries to make her think that he's all in love with her and everything, when we know he's just playing her. He has no interest in her whatsoever. So he has concocted this whole escape plan in his mind. And then Cheryl, the guard, betrays him. She doesn't tell him or anything, but she doesn't put the gun under the seat, and instead puts a pair cut off one of the hooks from jumper cables under there, so he can't escape. So he's all crushed because she betrayed him. Yeah. But it really redeems her, because at first I was like, oh my God, please don't do it, girl. So that plan fails. And so then we start getting the point of view of Blue, the niece, and she's the one who actually contacted Ansel and told him, hey, I'm your niece, and so he goes up and he meets her, and he is in love with her in a nice way, as a uncle would be with a niece, and can kind of see his mother in her. And he starts the restaurant that she's trying to run with her mom Rachel is starting to go under, so he's helping them rebuild a deck, and he's being nice and everything, and she actually likes him. So but we're kind of freaking out, oh God, because she is Blue at that age, as the teen, is the exact age of the girls that he had murdered. So Saffy then has been following Ansel because she really thinks that he murdered the girls, and so she of course is breaking so many rules probably, but so she follows him. She sees that he's at the cafe. Finally she just decides, I'm gonna figure out what the hell. She thinks he's just scouting her because she's a teen and doesn't know that there's that connection there. So finally she goes and talks to Rachel and Blue, which will be Elsa's wife and daughter, and Ansel's niece. So Saffy just basically confesses all to Rachel and Blue. Is like, I've been following him, here's the murderers, I knew these girls from the group home, he knew them there too, I think he murdered them. I almost got fired over, this. They pinned the wrong guy, and that guy hung himself, and yeah. So it freaks them out, so then they tell Ansel not to come back. So we know that Ansel still hasn't gotten arrested for these murders. So then we figure out that Ansel then, how does he, I'm trying to remember how he decides to go back and find Jenny. But he hunts down Jenny in Texas, and we see, and Jenny's doing well, and Hazel has gotten married by that point to a really nice guy, and she has 2 kids, Alma, and I can't remember the other girls' names. They're not real important in the story or anything. But so Jenny goes, she's in Texas, and Ansel goes up, and he isn't necessarily going to murder her or anything, but so he goes into the house, And Jenny freaks out and grabs a kitchen knife, and then he ends up murdering her. We don't really have the murder scene, but we know he murders her and stabs her and stuff. So then Saffy that knows that it was probably him, so they go track him down. He has left the area, he's washed everything down, so they can't exactly prove that he murdered her, but you know, of course Saffy knows he murdered her. So they are holding him. They finally track him down outside a hotel, wipe his truck down, there's no prints, you know, no blood, nothing, so he's already cleaned up. So they're holding him, but they have not arrested him. So Saffy then is like, oh, I'm there, I'm gonna go get him to confess. Meanwhile, they're planning the funeral for Jenny. So Hazel goes back home to go to Jenny's funeral and remembers the scene from whenever she was a teen of Ansel burying something in the backyard. And I all along was thinking it was a dead animal, that he killed a family pet or something, but we don't know. So Hazel goes, digs it up, and it's a box. And lo and behold, it's this old, crappy jewelry box that was Jenny's, that she never would have missed. Like, it was just some clutter in their room. And inside of it is like a barrette, a pearl bracelet, and lo and behold, it's a souvenir he kept from each one of the girls that he killed. So Hazel then looks up, figures out that Saffy, who had contacted Jenny and come to the hospital to talk to her about Ansel. So Hazel then goes to Saffy's house and says, hey, your commander, chief, said that I should probably bring this directly to you. So she gives Saffy the box with all these trinkets in it. So Saffy then recognizes the stuff and knows it's things that he kept from the girls from the group home when he killed them. So then Saffy goes and thinks she's going to get a confession out of Ansel. And you're like, oh my God, how are you going to do this? Because Ansel is not talking at all, just remaining silent. And he's not even under arrest. They don't have anything to even arrest him. So she goes in and starts kind of taunting him and brings out the pearl bracelet, and he freaks out. And he's like, I don't know why I murdered them. They didn't do anything wrong. They were just there at the moment. I picked them up and I murdered them. There's no answer. And so Saffy is then questioning herself. She's like, by going and getting these people to leave him, did I make him into the monster I thought he was? Or was he already the monster? And we know the answer to that is that Saffy did not create him, turn him into a killer in any way. But Saffy has Jenny's death on her hands, or she thinks she does, because if she hadn't kept pushing, maybe he would have just left her alone and let her live her life, and he wouldn't have went and murdered her. Who knows? But something eventually probably would have set him off, and he would have murdered again. So then we get into the analysis of the point of the book, and it's about how the execution is this whole ordeal, public event, and they spend all this money and all this fancy equipment to put him to death, and why are we doing this, and all the attention's on him, and he's getting more attention and things done for him than the victims are. And so it's really sad. And Hazel especially is like, this is really sad to see that it's all about him, when this supposedly is, they think they're doing that for us, the families of the victims, when why are we doing this? Why are we spending all this money on this and all this time and effort and everything? Meanwhile, we know that Ansel had written to Blue and asked him to be his witness, so he gets to invite one person to come watch him be put to death. And Blue decides she's going to go and witness the the execution of him, which I thought was really weird. And she doesn't even quite know why she does it. But her and Saffy meet, and Saffy kind of freaks out because, Blue kind of freaks out because she meets Hazel, and Hazel looks just like Jenny. Or Saffy does. And so then we see Blue talking with Saffy. And Blue tries to explain that the Ansel that she knew was sweet and kind and was a good person. And so she starts talking about how even someone who is a serial killer or murderer is still a person, and that they probably had a good point in their life and probably had people that did love them, and that the murderer loved, which is kind of weird that he would kill these other girls that were exactly her age, but then he would be so sweet and kind to Blue. Yeah, it's really weird. So we get into that thing about how the focus is on this killer instead of the victims. So then at that point, then we have Saffy then going through each of the girls that he had murdered and imagining Lila, like the girl who had the purple ring, imagining their life and what they would have wanted to be remembered for instead of being known as a murder victim. So that, you know, she was a sweet young girl who liked to get sunburned, and yeah, and then she goes on and imagine what the girls would have done with their lives, like, and the kids they would have had, and all the babies Jenny would have delivered, and even go so far as to imagine what their kids and grandkids would have went on to done. I mean, it's not real long, it's short and quick, but it's kind of like, okay, we get it, we get the point. So overall, amazing book. The twist that I didn't see was that the arrest, because we keep wondering, like, when is he going to get arrested? When are they going to catch him? Like, and so the twist that I didn't see was that he was actually in prison for murdering Jenny. So I didn't see that coming. And then the other thing we kind of think about is that if Hazel had went and dug up that box, not that the connections would have all been made, it would have been this random old jewelry box with this random old crap in it, jewelry, bread and stuff, like, so not necessarily that the connection would have been made, or that would have gotten turned into the police and the murder's been solved and Jenny had been saved. But we do kind of see that Hazel maybe should have done something, and then it would have saved her sister, but not really. It wouldn't have made it. I don't think the connection would have been made, and that it would have necessarily saved anyone. Overall, amazing story. I didn't see the twist that it was going to be Jenny that he murders and gets in prison for, and that then he would confess to Saffy. What I loved was that Saffy, when she was young, that we see her in the foster home, we see her become an amazing detective, and then we see her solve the crimes. So she had this connection with Ansel from way back when, and then she ends up being the one that gets puts him in prison. Kind of like redeeming herself for not speaking up and telling people about the dead fox. But she does still blame herself, and she wonders, you know, why she chased him for all this time and all these years. The other thing that we get to see that's at the end is we see Blue contact Lavender, Ansel's mom. So Blue contacts Lavender, writes to her and says, hey, I'm your granddaughter. Hello. And so Lavender, who has been really unable to go back and find her kids and apologize to them for leaving them and abandoning them, or letting the abuse occur, you know, kind of. We see her finally with the support of Sunshine, who she's now living with in another commune. The girls in the commune, though, all rally around Lavender, told her she should go and meet her granddaughter. So they all gather up the money, send her to go meet Blue. And so Lavender goes, they had been riding, and so Lavender asks Blue about, because Blue has told her all about Ellis and the amazing life he had, and the restaurant that they own, and all of this. So then we see Lavender ask her about Ansel, and Blue says, it's a very sad story. If you want to know it, though, I'm going to have to tell you in person. So Lavender finally, with the help of all the ladies in the commune, gets up the courage and goes and meets Blue and finds out that Ansel is in death row and about to be executed in like 20 days, I think. So Lavender, though, says she doesn't want to know the date and she's not going to go visit her son. And yeah, so she basically walks kind of away. We assume she's going to keep having a relationship with Blue, but we're not really sure, because it appears that Lavender's defense mechanism is to just go and hide and not have any contact with her children or their family at all. Yeah, Lavender kind of sucks, but at the same time, like, you're like, well, she was so young and she was abused and wasn't that smart to begin with, the poor girl. So can you blame her? But at the same time, you're like, you're freaking grown. You've gotten all this help. You have all these amazing people behind you. Like, why wouldn't you go be with your granddaughter? You know. So that's another thing at the end, kind of the wrap up. So it really is an amazing book. I love how the writing takes place in different points of view. I do like getting to see Ansel's side, and at the end he's like begging for mercy. He doesn't want to be killed, and he tries to say, like, do you believe in an alternate universe where I would have been a good person? And of course Saffy's like, well, we all wish there was an alternate universe, but there's only this one, and you're gonna have to pay for the crimes. So yeah, I kind of hope that there would be a sequel to this and we would get to follow Saffy some more, because I really liked her character. She is wounded and still like has sex with random men as kind of a way to get attention or to feel something, and kind of like one of the friends is like, oh, you're still young, you could meet someone and get married, and she's like, why would I do that? Like, anyways, but I kind of wish there was a sequel to where we could keep following Saffy and see like what happens with her, what her life becomes in the future. I mean, because she's this amazing badass young detective. So amazing book. I definitely give it 5 stars. And in fact, I think it might be one of the best books that I've read this year. Yeah, I'm gonna go so far as to say that. So if you have any questions or want anything clarified, just leave a comment and I'll try and respond back. And just remember, just because it's not the perfect book for you, doesn't mean it's not the perfect book for someone else.